Rahul Patel had lived in the USA for 3 years, having come from his native country of India on a student visa. He had been accepted to the medical program at Harvard University and in the process, had also come to accept the American way. He had a girlfriend. She was his classmate and they shared an apartment. They were common law partners, but where he came from, they would be unlawful partners. Rahul had promised to marry his girlfriend after he had received his medical degree. At least, that was what she wanted to hear. However, his Indian background would not allow him to go against the will of his mother. Rare is the Indian mother who would accept a white, promiscuous girl as her daughter-in-law. In the elaborate scheme of things, Indian boys must adhere to, and Rahul would heed his mother's wishes, and marry the right kind of girl. This, of course, he had never discussed with his girlfriend. To him, she was just a fling and a conjugal partner. She, on the other hand, took the relationship seriously. Rahul had previously not agreed to the matchmaking proposal of his mother and aunt. He reserved the right to see and talk to the girl in question. He had recently been informed that his aunt and her daughter were planning to come to the USA very soon and that he would have to make a decision before long. Much as he did not like being forced into making a decision, he had already agreed in principle. Besides, if his mother's taste and critical eyes were anything to go by, this Indian girl that had met with her favor must have already been carefully scrutinized and her beauty matchless. In his heart of hearts, he knew that he would accept his family's choice for his future bride. Rahul's American girlfriend, Emily, was a naturalized American citizen born to German parents. Amelia Vagdvarestas spent her whole life in the continental United States. Her parents were Christians, but when she grew up, Emily became an atheist. She was 24 and her Indian boyfriend was 23 years, and they had been living together for over a year. So far, the common understanding was that they would both put marriage and children on hold until they finished medical school and were gainfully employed. For the time being, Emily lived off her student loans while Rahul was financed by his rich mother. Rahul played his part of domestic partner well, to the point where Emily had no doubt in her mind this was the man that was going to be her future husband. In his case, apart from a warm body in his bed, he was just looking for someone to share the rent and expenses. For 15 months, the love affair plodded along without a hitch. One particular afternoon, a visitor showed up in front of their apartment. She was a young immigrant in a black burqa that left them both wondering as to her origin and her purpose in visiting. Emily suspected she was a Paki, but Rahul corrected her, saying she spoke fluent Hindi to the Pakistani cab driver when she arrived. They settled on the conclusion that she had come to the wrong address by mistake. Rahul decided to find out and so talked to her in Hindi and asked her who she was and what she wanted. She told him that she came from Germany and she wanted to meet a Mr. Rahul Patel from Baroda, India. Rahul was confused. A burqa-clad girl from Germany was asking for him by name. He shared his mother's disdain and hatred for Muslims, regardless of age, gender, race, and country of origin. He too held all Muslims responsible for murdering his father in a cold-blooded massacre at the Mumbai Taj Mahal Hotel. This burqa girl was not making it easy for him to be polite and civil. When she claimed that she came all the way from Germany to meet him personally, he looked at her with a big question mark on his face. He even looked at his girlfriend and sought her explanation. Emily lifted up her hands and shoulders, looking equally confused and baffled. "Who gave you my name and address, and how did you come to know about me? I am a Hindu. I don't have any Muslims in my family. I don't have Muslim friends in India or even in America. Your mother, Lakshmi Patel, had given us your address in America and asked us to visit you." "Who is us?" "You mean there are other people with you?" "I mean my mother and I." "Your mother? Who is your mother and where is she?" "My mother was arrested by the German police just 3 days before we were supposed to fly here." "Listen, girl. Maybe my mother had given both of you my name and address and asked you to visit me when you arrived in the States. However, let me make this very clear to you. I don't want anything to do with Muslims. I don't want to know why your mother was arrested in Germany, and I don't want to know who you are, or what your name is. I suggest that you go back to your Muslim relatives and don't ever come here again. I have no relatives. I don't know anyone in America. You mean to tell me that you have come directly from the airport to my apartment? Yes. Holy cow! What happened, honey? Asked Emily curiously when she heard the vehemence in her boyfriend's voice. This Muslim girl says that she has come all the way from Germany to the States to stay with me. That can't be possible. Who she is and where is her family? She said she has no relatives in the States and that her mother was arrested by the Germans. Holy shit! Is she some kind of a Muslim terrorist? You never know. I don't care who she is, I just want her to go away. Why don't we just refer her to social services? She sounds somewhat ignorant. I don't think she knows what a social service is anyway. I am going to tell her to go wherever she wants. I am very angry with my mother. I have told her 100 times not to give my address to any fucking Indian coming to the States. Once she gave my address to a Hindu boy who came and stayed with me for 6 months without spending a single dollar to help pay rent or food. I had to kick him out on the streets to get rid of him. Worse, my mother knows how much I hate Muslims. I don't know why she would give my address to this fucking burqa girl. Okay honey, let's just get her inside and then we can call social services to deal with her. We are not running a halfway house or a soup kitchen. If social services says this is not within their jurisdiction, then we can just refer her to the Muslim community. There are plenty of mosques in town that we can drop her off at. Yeah, that's a good idea. You know, I am just going to call my mother the moment we get rid of this stupid Muslim girl. I am going to change my address and phone number and she will just have to write and call me care of the university. After Rahul and Emily decided what to do with the unwanted guest, they asked her to come inside. As they made their way across the threshold, the Pakistani cab driver honked and yelled at her in Urdu, asking her to pay her fare. She stared at him blankly, wondering what all the commotion was about. Rahul noticed her indifference and approached the cabbie, asking him in Hindi what the trouble was. The cabbie told him that his fare was penniless and had not paid. Rahul took a moment to speak with his girlfriend and then paid off the cab driver. Inside their apartment, the two lovers served their unwanted guest a soda. They did not ask if she had had her lunch or whether she was hungry. After that, Emily brought the phone book and searched for the local social service office number. When she found the number, she asked Rahul to make the call and report the case of the Muslim girl who came to his apartment. The social service office told Rahul that they would only take care of refugee immigrants who came to settle in the USA. Those situations are dealt with at the airport, where their representatives would arrange for transfers to various refugee shelters or pre-arranged housing. A quick computer check told social services that the girl did not flag any lists on their computer and she was not shown to be an alien resident. They ended the conversation by telling Rahul that they could do nothing for their Indian guest. Rahul was incensed by the response of the representative and told them that he was a student living on a limited budget, provided for by his widowed mother in India. Failing to get any sort of response from social services, Rahul suggested that they just ask her to leave immediately and never return again to his apartment. Emily intervened and pleaded with him to let her stay for a day or two until they could find some charitable Muslim community outreach program to take her in. Against his wish, Rahul agreed to keep the burqa girl in his apartment. He told his girlfriend that they should try to know more about their unwanted guest before they allowed her to stay in their apartment. Rahul, scared that she might be faking her situation, was suspicious she might have some kind of terrorist link. Therefore, he tried to get to know more about her. She had already told them that her name was Amrita Khan. They asked her to tell them why her mother was arrested by the German police. She said that her mother was falsely accused by the Indian police of killing her sister in India and robbing her jewelry and other costly things. Her answer did not make any sense to them. They decided not to ask her any further questions. While Rahul had a problem with all Muslims in the world, his girlfriend had an issue with all immigrants from the Third World. Emily believed that immigrants from Asia and Africa were backward, uncivilized, lacked good manners, and unhygienic people. She believed that their clothes smelled and they ate smelly food. For that reason, she convinced her boyfriend not to allow Amrita Khan to sleep in their apartment. Their apartment had 2 bedrooms and a living room. Nevertheless, Amrita Khan was forced to sleep in the garage. It was during summer season when Amrita came to stay with them. The unrelenting heat kept her awake for a long period of time and the insects feasted on her flesh throughout the night. There was no fan in the garage. Even during her captivity in the homes of her 2 evil captors, Amrita was never forced to sleep in a place made for keeping cars. There were 2 cars in the garage. Amrita had been given a blanket and a pillow and nothing else. She slept in a small corner in the small garage. If the lovers had asked Amrita to sleep inside their washroom, that might have been more bearable than making her spend the night in their garage. Emily had a small pet dog. The small dog slept all alone in the 2nd bedroom. Worse of all, they did not give her anything to eat. The last meal Amrita ate was somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean between the European continent and North America continent. Moreover, she was not offered use of the shower or an opportunity to change her clothes. She had not used the toilet from the time she came in. Amrita Khan was a product of her upbringing. While genuinely a sweet girl, she had been taught to treat others with suspicion and was very slow to trust. Her mother had told her to travel incognito and hide her identity. She followed her mother's instructions to the letter, and more. How was she to know she didn't need to hide her identity from her cousin? Ronnie did not tell her daughter not to spend any money. Since leaving Germany, Amrita did not spend one single dollar. She had 65,000 US cash dollars in her luggage and handbag. Besides that, she had over $100 million in her overseas account. In keeping with the spirit of her mother's instructions, Amrita Khan remained swathed in her burqa and agreed to sleep in the garage. Sleep did not come easy on the hot concrete floor of the garage and the hunger pangs reminding her of her need to eat and drink. Holing up in an oppressive burial cloth was more uncomfortable than the torment of the mosquitoes. Her hosts had not thought to provide her with a mattress, pad, or table fan. It was well past midnight before Amrita gave in to her physical discomforts and allowed her fatigue to pull her into sleep. The heat of the day and the hot sun rays forced Amrita to awaken from her deep sleep. She woke up with a terrible headache and a strong feeling of nausea. She wanted to vomit, but her stomach had nothing to throw up. She was feeling feverish. She got up and wobbled her way into the apartment. She did not find anyone in the apartment. She lifted up her voice and called out Rahul's name several times, but no one responded. She realized that her cousin and his wife had already left the house and gone to school. Amrita naturally assumed that a man and a woman living together under the same roof were either married or directly related by blood. Her empty stomach forced her to look around the apartment in search for anything edible to quell her stomach. She began her search in one of the rooms, starting with the dog's bedroom. The dog wasn't there because its owner had taken it to its babysitter or dog sitter or whatever the hell they called it. Amrita found some leftovers from the dog's breakfast and consumed it. She even took some drinkable tasty liquid from its vessel and drank it. It wasn't enough to satisfy her thirst and hence she licked the vessel with her tongue. She searched the dog's room for more food and more juice to drink, but she did not find anything. Wherefore, she left the dog's bedroom and entered the bedroom of the lovers. Luckily, in the lovers' room she found a half-drank can of beer and finished it. Then, she looked around and found 2 glasses half filled with red liquid. She picked up one of them and began to drink it. The bitter taste forced her to stop halfway. Nonetheless, her thirst forced her to finish it. Then, she picked up the other glass and drank it too. After that, she saw a half bottle with red liquid in it. She lifted it up and looked at it for a while. Then, she began to drink it. It had the same taste, but she decided to finish it too. After that, Amrita Khan left the lover's bedroom and went into the living room. She sat on the comfortable couch and began to stare blankly at the huge TV screen in front of her. The TV was switched off. She began to feel everything around her moving, severely affected by the alcohol she had just ingested. This time, she extended her long legs the length of the sofa and laid her body to rest on the comfortable couch. The air-conditioned living room made her feel very sleepy. She wished that her cousin and his wife would have allowed her to sleep in the living room instead of the garage. The comfort of the big leather couch, the air-conditioned living room, and the alcohol she drank rid Amrita of her head and body aches she had sustained throughout the night, along with the effects of the heat and the torture of insect bites. The dog food she had gulped down was enough to satisfy her hunger. She was now fully satiated, but inebriated. She began to sweat in spite of the chill of the well-air-conditioned apartment, giving in to the seductive comfort of her surroundings. She tossed off her burqa and stretched out in her salwar kameez. She tried to keep awake, but she could not. She soon fell asleep and immediately began to snore so loud that she could be heard by the neighbors. Meanwhile, Rahul and Emily, after finishing their classes, went to a nearby mosque and reported the case of the homeless Muslim girl who came to their apartment last night and asked for help. Rahul informed the Imam that he was Hindu and had no relationship with the Muslim girl. He requested the Imam to send some people from the mosque to his apartment to see about the homeless girl and provide shelter for her. The Imam told him that the mosque was not a place for the homeless. Then, he told him to advise the homeless Muslim girl to approach social services for help. Rahul said he had tried that, only to have social services tell him that they were unable to help. The Imam said to him the mosque could do nothing in this case. He told him that the mosque had no funds to provide help and shelter for Muslims with problems like this. Nonetheless, the Imam admitted that the mosque occasionally offered temporarily shelter for Muslim men who had no place to stay. However, a Muslim woman would not be allowed to sleep inside the mosque no matter what her circumstances. When the Imam refused to help, Emily agreed with her boyfriend to kick the burqa girl out of their apartment. She said that, if she refused to go, then they should immediately call the police. Rahul concurred, driven more by the fact that he simply did not wish to spend money keeping a parasite in their garage. When the lovers arrived at their apartment, they were surprised to find their unwanted guest sleeping in their living room instead of the garage. She was lying on her back with her black burqa on the floor. She was in her salwar and kameez with her legs bare to the knees. One of her legs was stretched out over the back of the couch and the other bent at the knee. Both lovers were struck by her beauty. She appeared to Rahul like a princess in a fairy tale. He could not believe that a human being could possibly be so beautiful. Staring at her, he was convinced that her face and figure far outshone that of Aishwarya Rai and Priyanka Chopra of Bollywood. They would just have to be content with second place compared to this vision of loveliness. The more time Rahul spent admiring the sleeping beauty laid out before him, the more aroused he became. Emily, on the other hand, began to see a threat and lost her temper. She rushed the sleeping form of a woman and dragged her off the couch. Amrita fell off the couch with a thud and woke up thinking she was in the grip of a horrifying nightmare. As the face of the angry white girl slowly came into focus, she put 2 and 2 together. She stood up quickly and looked blankly at the angry white girl. She did not understand why she had been assaulted. Emily was screaming in her face and yelling at her in English. Amrita could not grasp a word of what the angry white girl was saying to her. It was Rahul who intervened and told her that she wasn't supposed to sleep in the living room. He said to her that the living room wasn't a place for sleeping. She said to him that she was sorry but she was tired and sleepy and could not help it. It was abundantly clear that Rahul's attitude towards the burqa girl had changed after seeing her without her burqa. His hate for Muslims seemed to have been displaced by thoughts of her on his bed. It would simply not do to kick her out now. How could he chase this most sexually appealing woman of his dreams out of his life? How could he strike up a relationship or anything if she was deported? Somehow, the incessant ranting of his American girlfriend began to pierce his reverie and he realized that she was still going on about how the unwanted guest was defiling their couch with her filthy body. Rahul tried to placate Emily by saying that Amrita had fallen asleep in the living room unintentionally, and that she should not be so harsh on her. Emily refused to see his point of view and reiterated her demand that she be thrown out of their apartment right away. Rahul told her that it would be improper and unfair to kick such a young homeless girl out on the streets when she had nowhere else to go and probably didn't know the language to survive on her own. The look on her boyfriend's face and his change of heart was not lost to Emily. She guessed correctly that after he had seen the beautiful face and the exposed body of the burqa girl, things would now change between them. Sensing no response from Rahul, she confronted him and delivered her ultimatum. You either throw out this filthy disgusting Paki immigrant out of here or I'm going to leave for good. Rahul paused, and then acquiesced, begging his not to be satisfied with anything less angry girlfriend for a grace period of 24 hours so that he could make arrangements within the Indian community to house his incredibly beautiful house guest. Of course, his mind was working overtime on another plan altogether. Once Rahul had managed to get his girlfriend to calm down and allow Amrita to stay for another day in their apartment, he began to push the limits to see how far he could go. He tried to convince his girlfriend to allow their guest to sleep in the second bedroom occupied by her pet dog. Emily said that she would never allow anyone to take the place of her doggy. She simply valued her dog way too much to allow a Paki girl to take over his living quarters. She responded by saying that her dog might feel bad about being forced to sleep in the living room and give up his bedroom. He tried another angle and asked that Amrita be allowed to sleep in the living room. Once again, Emily sternly shot that suggestion down by saying that the Paki might dirty up their couch. Emily was not worried about the couch as much as she was worried about making the Paki girl too comfortable. If she got comfortable, she might not want to leave. With neither one willing to give in, a long argument ensued which culminated in the decision to allow the Muslim girl to sleep in their kitchen. He also convinced her to allow her to have dinner in their kitchen. Emily grudgingly agreed, again worrying about making their temporary guest too cozy. She agreed to serve the guest eggs on toast. She cooked it with Rahul looking on. Emily was now sure that her boyfriend had a major crush on the Paki girl. Things began to change the moment he saw what she looked like under her robe. The Paki girl must have removed her clothes in order to tempt her boyfriend. Before any further chemistry develops, she would have to put a stop to all this nonsense. Emily decided that her boyfriend was not to be left alone with the Paki temptress. They were now being observed discreetly. Rahul also thought that the Paki girl had removed her burqa and veil for his benefit. Of course, she was beginning to show such an overt interest in him. How would his girlfriend agree to her staying in their apartment? He decided that the best way to work this problem out would be to buy some time for himself. He would smuggle her from their apartment and keep her in a basement belonging to one of his Indian friends. His Indian friend had recently traveled to India and got married to an Indian girl and brought her back with him. He too had a white girlfriend before he ditched her to fulfill his duty as a faithful son and stand by his parents' choice for him. Likewise, Rahul decided to approach his Indian friend, telling him that he had found a nice Indian girl and decided to marry her. Then, he planned to ask him to rent his basement to his new Indian girlfriend and he would pay her rent. Emily was also busy making plans. She was determined the Paki girl and her boyfriend would remain separated forever. She already heard some stories from her American girlfriends that Indian boys were quite capable of having an interim girlfriend before being called back to India, only to return with an Indian bride. She did not want to be strung along after having become emotionally invested in a long-term relationship only to be dumped. For that reason, she would not, from that night on, enjoy a restful night's sleep. She watched her fiancé like a hawk, hoping her suspicions would bear just fruits. Every time Rahul went to the washroom, she followed him and waited for him in the living room until he came out. Her excuse was that she too wanted to use the washroom. Many times, during the night she visited the kitchen and checked on the Paki girl. She wanted to know whether the burqa girl was going to shed her cocoon and expose herself again to entice her soon-to-be husband. Strangely enough, she would always be clothed in her black shell. The following morning, Emily feigned excessive menstrual pain and decided to stay home, as she could not sleep at all the previous night. Obviously, she did not want to go to college because something in the back of her mind told her that Rahul might backtrack and try to sleep with the burqa girl. Rahul did not bother to compel Emily to go to the doctor or ask if he could get anything for her. He just said his goodbyes and left. In actual fact, he was happy she did not come with him that day. Instead of going to his classes, he set about putting his plan in action. He headed directly to the Indian couple he had in mind, and told them about the breathtaking beautiful Indian girl who came to his apartment. He said that he wanted to break up with his white girlfriend and had decided to marry the Indian girl. The couple welcomed his decision and promised to keep the girl in their basement and do everything they could to see that their marriage would soon take place. With Rahul out of the picture, Emily decided she had very little time to get the Paki out of her apartment permanently. She went to the burqa girl who was still sleeping in the kitchen and woke her up. Then, she took hold of her hand and dragged her to the washroom. She showed her the tub and the soap. After that, she opened the shower and filled the tub with water. Amrita understood that the wife of her cousin wanted her to take a bath. She had not had a bath for 3 days. She was afraid that if she used the tub without someone giving her permission, her cousin's wife might not like it. For that reason, she waited for someone in the house to ask her to take a bath. Therefore, she was glad when her cousin's wife asked her to use the tub so she could take a bath. After that, Emily locked the Paki girl up inside the washroom. She did not want the burqa girl to come out of the washroom until she could carry out the next step of her plan. Then, she went to the kitchen and began to search the small bag of the Paki girl. The first thing she discovered was Amrita Khan's passport under a different name from what she had told them. She read the name with great amazement, Aphrodite Krishna Khan. During her relationship with her Hindu boyfriend, Emily understood that those 3 names could not be together in somebody's name, because Aphrodite was an English name, Krishna a Hindu name, and Khan a Muslim name. She knew that neither a Hindu would use Khan nor a Muslim would use Krishna. Her surprise mounted when she found the $65,000 in cash stashed in her belongings. She thought that a girl with such a huge amount of money would not agree to sleep one night in the garage and another night in the kitchen unless she was beside her mind. Moreover, she knew no rational human being would stay more than 24 hours without food when she had $65,000 in her bag. Emily could only come up with 3 possibilities. First, the money was counterfeit, second, the burqa girl was involved in drug trafficking, and third, the Paki girl was going to use the money to finance some terrorist plot. Therefore, Emily picked up the phone immediately and dialed 911 and reported the possible terrorist activities in her apartment. Amrita Khan had already been imprisoned inside the washroom before the police came. She took her bath and tried to come out, but she found the door was locked from the outside. She knocked on the door and called in Hindi for someone to come and let her out. No one responded to her call. She sat more than 1 hour inside the washroom after she finished her bath. When the washroom door was finally unlocked, Amrita was frightened when she saw the face of the person standing in front of the doorway. She expected to see the white face of her cousin's wife. Instead, she saw the face of a black person who had a body and face of a man, but the chest of a woman. If it wasn't for her huge breasts, Amrita would have mistaken the female police officer for a man. She was being freed from her temporary prison into a more permanent enclosure. Amrita began to shake with fear and in her distraught state of mind thought that the woman was a burglar who had broken in and assaulted her sister-in-law and was about to attack her too. Her fear was intensified when she saw 3 men and 2 other women and 1 large dog, which she thought was a lion. Therefore, instead of coming out, she retreated and began to cry out loud for help. The policewoman went in after her and took hold of her hand and dragged her out. When she was brought out, another cop placed 2 handcuffs on her hands. When they took her into the living room, Amrita saw her cousin's wife was sitting comfortably on one of the sofas. She talked to her in Hindi and begged her to tell those people who dragged her out of the washroom and handcuffed her to free her hands. Emily ignored her tears and continued to watch the arrest of the Paki girl as if she was watching a movie about a dangerous female terrorist in a theater. The cops waited until Rahul returned to his apartment. During their wait, they took the statement of his girlfriend. Emily made up a big story about the so-called Muslim suspect and female terrorist. She added many things to her statement that were not true. When Rahul arrived, he was terrified to see there were 6 police officers and a huge brute in his living room. He saw Amrita was sitting on the floor while her hands were handcuffed behind her back. She was not wearing her black burqa. She was in the same salwar and kameez that he saw her in the previous day while she was lying half-naked on the couch. Although her face was unveiled, she appeared to him as a totally different person. She looked so frightened and terrified. Then, his eyes caught sight of his girlfriend. She looked calm and happy and her face gleaming with satisfaction. Before he could ask Emily to tell him what was going on, one of the police officers asked him what relation he had with the Muslim girl. He said that he knew nothing about her except that someone gave her his address. He also said that he was trying to help her find a shelter to go to. The police explained to him why they decided to detain her for further investigation, for lying about her real name and the huge amount of money that was found in her bag. Rahul was shocked when he heard that the burqa girl was hiding $65,000 in her bags and that her real name wasn't Amrita Khan, but Aphrodite Krishna Khan. He also could not believe that those 3 names could be combined together to form the name of an Indian person. He too doubted the innocence of the burqa girl and in his heart, he thanked his gods that she was exposed and arrested before she could get him and his girlfriend in some serious trouble. In the third world, the most dangerous place for a detainee was the interrogation room. If a young beautiful girl like Amrita Khan could survive the beatings, rape, and violent extraction of the so-called truth by ruthless police interrogators, she could survive any kind of torture and abuse after that. However, in the first world, the most fatal place for the suspect was inside the prison itself. In the Western countries, inmates detest 3 types of prisoners. Those held for violence against women and children, pedophiles, and terrorists. If it appeared that the suspect was detained under the charges of domestic violence against women or child abuse, then he might be murdered by his inmates before the final date of his trial. Likewise, if the suspect was arrested under the charge of a terrorist plot, then he or she might be strangled to death by one of his or her inmates before coming to trial. To avoid premature judgment, such detainees are often placed in solitary confinement. Amrita Khan was interrogated on the same day she was held in custody. The police used a Hindi-speaking interpreter and questioned her on the charges and accusations of being a terrorist and a drug dealer which Emily the complainant had lodged against her. Unfortunately, she was not able to give any justifiable answer to any of the questions she was asked. Her answers were vague and revealed that she was very childish and did not know what she was saying in many cases. For that reason, the police decided to detain her for further investigation. The investigation into her case led to official inquiries and requests from authorities in all cities she had previously lived in or visited for short periods of time, such as Mumbai, Jeddah, Asmara, Tehran, Zurich, London, Paris, Baroda, New Delhi, and Berlin. While the police was awaiting official reports from the FBI and overseas, Amrita was detained in a maximum security penitentiary. Most of the detainees in that prison were dangerous female gangsters and notorious criminals. Unfortunately, the police department in Cambridge did not keep Amrita in a separate cell, but kept her in a dormitory crowded with streetwise repeat offenders. There was not a single detainee that could speak any of the languages that Amrita Khan understood. She could speak English but with a heavy Indian accent that made it difficult for her American guards and inmates to understand. For that reason, she was treated with disdain and mockery. Some of the suspects hated her for her beauty and others for her racial background. Her life became subject to danger after one of the guards inadvertently blurted out why she was being detained. When some of the gangsters found out the Indian girl was Muslim and arrested because she was planning to carry out a deadly terrorist attack on the city, they vowed to murder her before the final day of her trial. A leader of one of the gangs determined she would kill her by strangling her while she was asleep at night. The leader happened to be a huge woman with a muscular build. She was white, but her gang included black, Mexican, and white females. She decided to suffocate her with a pillow and just sit on her. Oddly enough, she felt good about being able to uphold justice in a criminal justice system from on the inside. In order to make sure that no one would interfere to save the female Muslim terrorist, the gang leader informed the dormitory inmates that no one should call the guards or try to stop her. The word was passed among the guards who were supposed to cover the night shift that she would kill their relatives on the outside if any one of them dared try and prevent her from killing the Indian terrorist. All the inmates in the dormitory lockup came to know the Indian girl was going to be murdered during the night. However, none of them had the courage to prevent a cold-blooded murderer. All the guards were made aware of the murder plot against the Indian girl. Likewise, none of them had the guts to do their job to protect the victim. She would not remain innocent until proven guilty. Amrita Khan was the only one in the penitentiary who did not know that she was going to die in the middle of the night.